Shenjtorët e Shqipërisë, një podcast në Shqip, ku do të njohim kush janë shenjtorët e ditëve të mëvonshme në Shqipëri e kudo në botë.
Në këtë podcast do të kemi bashkë bisedime me të ftuar, ku do t'i përgjigjemi pyetjes: çfarë do të thotë për ty të jesh një shenjtor i ditëve të mëvonshme?
Unë jam Gjoni Myrtaj.
Dhe unë jam Enida Rama Alushaj. Mirë se erdhët.
Le të fillojmë. Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Shenjtorët e Shqipërisë podcast, an Albanian podcast where we get to know who are the saints of Albania. This is episode number 65. I am your host, Gjoni Myrtaj, and I'm joined here by co-host Enida Rama Alushaj. Përshëndetje, Enida.
Hello, Johnny. Hello, dear friends. I'm so grateful to be here on another episode, and we thank you for always supporting us by watching our weekly episodes on our podcast channel and YouTube. And we remind you to subscribe and to always share our videos and you don't miss any new episodes.
Yes, we would also like to remind you that we welcome any Latter-day Saints members and missionaries who have a connection with the church and the saints in Albania. We can hold these interviews both in Albanian and English for your convenience. And this episode is also a special one because we have two English-speaking guests who will be addressing us in this episode. So, Anita, without further ado, could you please introduce them for us?
I would love to. They are very special to me personally. Our guests for today are Leonard and Joan Boydell from England. They are both born in Lancashire and they were married in 1968, and now they have 4 children together, 2 boys and 2 girls. Leonard was baptized on 3rd September 1960, and he has served as a branch president, bishop, and stake president, while Joan was baptized on 10th November 1962, and she served in various callings in the church, in primary, relief society, both at ward and stake level. Joan enjoys cooking, family history, reading, and visiting family, while Leonard enjoys walking, cycling, table tennis, and he's really skilled in woodworking, wood carving, and pyrography. Together, they have served as a member and leader support missionary in Albania, in Elbasan. That's why we know them. They have served from May 2012 to November 2013. They are presently living in Harrogate, in England. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, guys. I'm so happy that you are here.
It's a pleasure it's a pleasure to have both of you here. So feel free to share your experiences when we do ask you the questions. So we always start with your upbringing because we feel it is important to sort of know where you came from and how was your lives back then. So I'll address Leonard first, and then Joan can join after. Would you like to describe how was your upbringing? How was your childhood?
Yes. I was one of 4 boys. To my mum and dad. Very simple working class background. My dad worked in a factory in sheet metal work. My mum often worked as a cook. She was multi-talented, did dressmaking, baking, making wedding cakes, and all sorts of things. So I was the 3rd of my brothers, and so we lived in Bolton in Lancashire. So just a standard education through to the age of 16. Didn't go on to university. University was not something anyone in my family had done. So the expectation was that when you left school, you would get a job and you would help to support the family. So I left school at 16, got an apprenticeship in sheet metal work, which apprenticeships were like the big thing to have because it theoretically gave you a job for life. And so I served my apprenticeship from the age of 16 through to the age of 21. Just a standard education.
Right. How about you, Joan? How was your childhood?
I was an only child. My father was actually 40 when I was born, and they actually thought that they were never going to have any children. So needless to say, I was very, very treasured and spoiled. But I think being an only child has its drawbacks, but it also has its benefits. I was very loved and I led a very sheltered life. My father obviously was very protective, and it was only when I was 14 and joined the church that he actually let me start sort of moving away from the home a little bit. So yeah, I had a very loving home. My parents too were all very working class. My father worked on a maintenance gang in not a factory, an engineering works. And my mother worked in a cotton mill. She was one of those people that worked very hard from the age of 14 in cotton mills in Lancashire. So yeah, we both came from very humble beginnings.
That is so wonderful to hear. It looks like you guys had a wonderful experience in growing up, and it's definitely unique to you, both of you. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
It's okay.
I think, Joan, even though you were an only child, I think having Leonard as the husband of their daughter, he also was a great son, not just a son-in-law.
Absolutely. I think Leonard was actually closer to my father than he was to his own. So that was good.
That's wonderful. I want to ask you and want to know more about how you know the church, how are you related to the gospel. Joan, I would love to start with you. You were baptized a week after the missionaries knocked on your door, right?
Well, they knocked on our door on Saturday lunchtime, and I was baptized the following Friday evening. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty fast for for me.
Yeah.
Since you guys know that I waited 2 years to get baptized. So
Yeah,
please tell us how did that happen?
Yeah, Mary's just knocked on our door, and I answered the door, and they said that they had a message about Jesus Christ and could they share it with us. So I immediately shouted my dad to come to the door, because there's no way I would have let them in the house on my own without his permission. And when he came, I was really surprised that he actually said, yes, come in. So that was the start. They came Saturday lunchtime. We went to church on the Sunday evening to a fireside, and the rest is history. They taught us a lesson each day, because the missionary that first came to us was going home, and he said, if you know it's true and you're going to be baptized, please let me do it. So they rushed the lessons through so that he could do the baptism.
Oh, that's very wonderful. What about your parents? Did they accept the gospel too?
They said they would not be rushed, so they waited another 2 weeks, and then they were baptized.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. No.
Leonard, how was about you? You met the missionaries while playing basketball, as you told us. How did you then accept to listen to the missionaries?
Yes, baseball, not basketball.
Oh. Yeah, sorry about that.
Different sports. Yes, it was one of those, you could call it a coincidence, an act of God, I don't know. A friend and I, it was the school holidays in Bolton. We didn't know what to do, and so we walked to the local park. My friend was 2 years older than me and kind of my hero, who I looked up to. And we went into the park, and there was a large green playing field area, and we saw these guys playing baseball. Nobody played baseball in England. I mean, it's not a sport we play. So that was kind of unusual. So we went and we sat on a bench just to watch them. We noticed there were two older guys. When I say old, I mean in their early 20s, and then a bunch of teenagers. So one of them trotted over and asked if we would like to join in. So we had to go home for lunch, but we came back in the afternoon and they were still there. So we joined in. they taught us the rudimentary rules of playing baseball, and we just had fun learning the game. And then afterwards, when we'd finished, I mean, we noticed they were wearing badges, and we noticed they both had the same first name, it seemed, Elder.
Elder and two young adults, right?
Yeah, young elders. So we just kind of asked them, like, who they were and what they were doing. And of course, that's the opportunity they were waiting for, to introduce the gospel to us. And so I think sort of nearly every day we met up with them and played baseball and they invited anybody who came into the park, they invited to join in. So sort of a lot of teenage people joined in. They organized some games against kids in other towns, invited us to church. There was no church in the town we lived in. We had to travel, I think it was about 8 miles to go to the nearest church. And so we did that. And then eventually, well, they talked to my parents, they talked to my brothers. And then eventually they asked my friend Michael and I if we would be baptized. And I wasn't sure. So I asked Michael what he thought, and he said he was going to be baptized. So I said, okay, well, if you're being baptized, I'm being baptized.
Not the best of reasons.
No, not the most profound reason. But anyway, you know, that got me started. And so we were baptized he and I on the 3rd of September in 1960. And then some months later, my mother was baptized and 2 of my brothers.
That's wonderful. I feel that it is very special that you guys are both converted in the gospel. How did you feel about that?
Well, if we hadn't joined the church when we did, we would never have met, because we actually met at church. We didn't know each other beforehand. And so all the blessings that have come certainly into my life have stemmed from joining the church and meeting this wonderful man.
Which is flattering me now.
Well, you deserve it. You both deserve it.
Yes, I think, you know, sometimes you wonder, you know, if we hadn't gone to the park on that day and met those missionaries, you know, whether another opportunity would have come up in life for us to meet the missionaries and learn about the gospel. Yeah, and I'm not sure I took the decision to be baptized with a full understanding or a full testimony or anything like that. You know, that came later as time went on and we attended church. Eventually, my friend Michael, after about a year, he stopped going to church. But, you know, I carried on. So, yeah, and from that age of joining the church, I recognize a lot of things changed in my life, you know, not just spiritually, but physically. I seemed to get better at sports because we had a lot more things to participate in when we were youth. We had athletics events and swimming galas and football and matches. And so I grew, I think, physically as I got older, but spiritually, yeah, more capable, you know, from when I joined the church. So I think it affected me in many ways that one wouldn't think about really. Just, I think, because of the association with people from church and all the activities that the church were organizing for young people at that time.
Mm-hmm. That is incredible. Just listening to your stories as converts to the gospel is fascinating to see, you know, how the Lord sort of directed the missionaries in finding you and you finding the gospel. And it can be different ways, right? Like playing baseball, which I'm a bit shocked that happens in the UK because it's not a common sport. And then knocking the doors. I mean, that used to be, even in my mission, used to be something that was so common. The missionaries would knock doors. They don't do that as much now, but it's interesting to see how the Lord works. I guess my next question would be, once you join the church, as you probably know, members have a responsibility in serving and, you know, holding callings in the church. Can you talk us about your callings and what was something interesting that you both learned about serving in the church?
Well, I think my wife's was very quick, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. I was baptized Friday evening. And on Sunday, I was 14 years old, of course. And on Sunday, I was called to be primary counsellor in the primary presidency. We had a very, very small branch, and lots of people had 2, 3, 4 callings just to make the church function. And so to them, asking a 14-year-old to work with primary children was not unusual. So it was very strange for me, I must admit. But yeah, that was the start of my journey serving. So it came very quickly.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. Obviously, I received the priesthood as a deacon and teacher. You had to go through each stage in those days, but I was 14, so a teacher would have been my natural place in the priesthood. I think the thing I mostly learned about was service, and how important that was. Especially in a small branch, like Joan said, you're really needed in different capacities. And so it seemed like every Sunday I would be responsible for preparing the sacrament. And then when I could, blessing the sacrament. And I think one day I kind of complained to my branch president that I was having to bless the sacrament every week. And he kind of sat me down and explained, what a privilege it was to be able to serve in that way and to bless the sacrament for the benefit of the members. And I don't really remember my callings in the early days, but obviously as time went on, I served on a branch presidency and then became the branch president when we were in Bolton. And then we moved down to London, and I served on a bishopric and then became the bishop. And then I served on the state presidency and became the state president. And it's just kind of gone on and on and on. And so wherever we go, we've moved a lot, served in a lot of branches and wards. Wherever we go, we just know the Lord will put us to work and give us a chance to not only bless our lives, but to bless the lives of other people.
Oh, excuse me.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I was very impressed how you called the calling as a privilege rather than just a responsibility given to you, because it is true that in the church, we are privileged to serve one another and to help build the kingdom of God. However, a couple of our members in the church, they do struggle with the concept of accepting a calling or even doing their calling. So can I get a word of advice from both of you on how we can better accept a calling given to us then, and also magnifying that?
Yeah, I think that we need to understand that when the bishop or one of the bishopric calls us to a position, he's doing that on behalf of the Lord. And I think both of us have been in the situation where we've not necessarily felt comfortable being given a calling that we've been asked to do, but we've never said no, because if you say no, you're saying no to the Lord, not just to the bishop.
Yeah, and I think, the Lord doesn't want our lives to be easy. There's no growth in life being easy. It's only when we have challenges, when we challenge ourselves, that we grow, we get stronger physically, mentally, spiritually. And yeah, so some of the callings I was asked, to be a bishop, you feel completely inadequate to the calling. But the scripture says, who the Lord calls, the Lord justifies. And so, with the Lord's help, you can make it happen. And the Lord knows your inadequacies. He knows your weaknesses, and he helps you to succeed in spite of those. And then, of course, when you're a branch president or a bishop or a stake president, you have a big supporting team. You're not just one man running the whole show. You have your counselors, and then you have the priest to back up, and the Relief Society and primary. So the whole organization is there to help you and to make life easier. But I think sometimes, people think that they deserve callings that the Lord doesn't give them. And then they get a bit mad about that. They're not humble enough to accept any callings. I remember once as a stake president going to visit a branch, and the branch president asked me if I would pass the sacrament. And I was a bit surprised at that. I said, why are you asking me? You've got all these brethren. And he said, the problem is some of our older brethren think they're above passing the sacrament. So he said, if you do it and set the example, they'll have no excuse. So I'm happy, it's a privilege to pass the sacrament. And so I did. But that just, again, gave me a reminder that sometimes, as people go up, perhaps in the priesthood, they think they're getting above some of those other responsibilities. But even if you're a high priest, you still have the authority of a deacon and a teacher. So the Lord expects you to function where you're needed and not to let pride get in the way.
I love that. That's very, very like a lesson to live by. Yeah. Now I want to talk about your mission. You also have been to serve a couple of different missions as a senior missions. Also before coming to Albania, you served in England, Manchester. How was that?
Before coming to Albania, we served a temple mission. So we worked full-time in the Preston, England temple. And while we were doing that, we decided we wanted to do another mission. So instead of going home, setting up home again, and then having to, all the upheaval of selling everything and leaving, we decided to do it straight away. So while we were serving in the temple, we put our papers in and actually requested Albania, because we knew the Fords very well. They'd been students down in London when we lived there, and we were basically surrogate parents while they were away from home. So we knew them very well. And when we found out that they had been called as mission president over there, we sent a message of congratulations and let them know that we were putting our papers in for a mission as well. So Andrew immediately sent a message back saying, why don't you come and serve with us? So we actually did request Albania. And Andrew always used to tell the missionaries at zone meetings that we were the only people that had ever requested Albania. So yeah, Albania was our second mission. And then we served another one with our son-in-law, who'd been called as mission president in Manchester.
Yeah, that was 2017. Yeah, so we finished our mission in the temple, and then 5 weeks later moved to Albania. I must admit, when Andrew said, come to Albania, I thought, I don't even know where Albania is. I don't know what it's like. I don't know anything about it. And so Andrew said, the temple used to close down for 2 weeks at Christmas. So he said, why don't you come over to Albania, and then we can show you around Albania and other parts of the mission, and it will help you to get to know the country and to see the people. And, we can talk about challenges you might face. So we did. We went up to Montenegro and into Kosovo. And
Macedonia.
He took us to Elbasan, and he said, no, I need a couple in Elbasan. There's an apartment being finished off here that's owned by a member. You'll be able to rent that. And then he sent us with 2 missionaries to see a family in Elbasan. And so we went to meet with them. And of course, we recognized language was going to be a problem. But when we met this family, their 2 daughters spoke wonderful English. And they explained that most young people learned English at school. So we knew there was like that safety valve, that if we needed it, there would be people we could turn to for help. And so, yeah, having toured, having seen some of the country, having met the people and so forth, yeah, as soon as we got back home, the only thing we had to fill in, it says, is there anywhere you would like to serve? And so we just typed in Albania. And Andrew said, you might not get it. They might choose to send you somewhere else. Anyway, when we got our call, that's what it was. So we were very excited. But it was still really scary.
We neither of us speak any other language. And so the thoughts of going to a foreign country where we didn't understand the language was a little daunting for us. And we never really did master it. We learned a few words, but at our age, information goes in here and comes out here. So it never stayed.
Yeah. I think with so many other things in life, you go in faith.
Of course, yeah.
And then we meet young people like you who all speak wonderful English. And so that was reassuring. And of course, we went around a lot with the young missionaries teaching the gospel. So they always translated for us. People translated in the ward for us. So we got by. Would it have been better if we'd learned the language? It would have been a lot better. But there you go. That still remains a challenge. But we got through, and we had a wonderful time and wonderful experience.
Yeah, we loved our mission. We loved the people, and just look back on those memories very fondly.
Of course, I'm so grateful that you chose Albania. I didn't know that, and I'm also very grateful for the force that they, let's say, pushed you to accept your calling or to come here. I'm so grateful, because otherwise I wouldn't know you. And actually, I don't know if you know this, but you guys are the first couple missionaries, like senior couple, that I met. So let's say that I'm grateful because you are so kind and good that you left a big impression. So this is also one of the reasons that I continue to attend church and to learn more about the gospel. And here I'm today.
Thank you. Well, you're a blessing in our lives, as were so many very impressive. We were impressed by the strength of the testimony of the young people in Albania.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, for sure. We had at that time, we had many adults and young youth that they were very amazing. Oh, we have a picture here. Maybe you can talk a bit about it.
Ah, yes. So this is a family we met. They lived about 45 minutes drive outside of Elbasan, and they lived way up on a hillside in like a little farm. They were called the Guri family. The bottom picture shows the whole family. I'm not sure how the missionaries met them, but anyway.
Their eldest daughter found a leaflet on a bus.
Oh, that's right. She found a leaflet about the church on the bus and contacted the missionaries. And so, yeah, we would have to drive up there, park the car, and then we'd have to walk up through the fields, up the slope to get to their house.
He said it was a hill, but it felt like a mountain.
So you can see they were a good-sized family. So the missionaries taught them, and we helped. And so when they wanted to be baptized, we actually, that where I'm standing during that baptism, that was their water system, where they stored their water. And so they cleaned it out and put clean water in, and we did the baptisms in that, which is kind of unusual. You had to climb down these like metal steps to get in there. Eventually I think the whole family were baptized. So, it's interesting. When we went on the mission, I never thought about actually doing baptisms. I knew we'd help the young missionaries, but I assumed they would do the baptisms. So, yeah, that was something that took me by surprise for some reason. So it was a lovely thing to do.
Yeah, I thought too I had the same thought, that it's kind of unusual. So I'm grateful that you had this chance. Was this the only baptism that you had in Albania?
No, I did others. I got quite proficient at the baptism.
I had to hold it up on a piece of paper in Albanian so he could read it.
I'm sure my pronunciation wasn't very good, but that was special. And we did travel quite a way out of Elbasan to teach some families. And of course, the missionaries always wanted to open a branch in those areas. And, President Ford said, they were too remote and too small to make it function. So again, if you baptize people who are a long way away and they have no transportation, then getting into church can be difficult, unless they take the fagon. Is that what they were called?
Yeah.
Fagon.
Yeah.
Well remembered.
I remembered.
Well remembered.
That's my Albanian words. So that was difficult, and often they couldn't get to church. But I met some lovely people out of Elbasan as well as in.
And of course, the missionaries loved it because we were their taxi. They didn't have a car. The zone leaders did, but the other two didn't. And so if they had any contacts outside of Elbasan, it would be, Elder and Sister Boydell, could you possibly take us? So we got lots of opportunity to sit in teachers. So it was really good.
So you were also like a big blessing for the missionaries.
Oh yeah, we realized at first, we thought they just wanted to be with us, but we realized they just wanted to be in our car. We were the taxi service for them.
We didn't know.
No, we had some good times traveling, with the missionaries.
But I'm curious to know, did you guys experience like a cultural shock, or was it hard for you at the time in Albania?
Yes.
I can remember the first night standing on our balcony and hearing the prayers through the loudspeakers and I stood there and I thought, I'm not on holiday. I'm actually living here for 18 months. And it was a surreal experience to start with. And I can remember going shopping to start with and being absolutely terrified because all I could do was point at something and use a lot of body language as opposed to words. But the local people around us, I think, got used to us, and we're just lovely. So yeah, we loved the people of Elbasan. They were made us feel at home and very welcome.
Yeah, I think there are so many differences. The church at Elbasan had that big car park that nobody parked in because nobody had a car. I don't think the church in America could probably visualize that. I mean, we had a car, one family had a car, and that was it. And I know whenever we took members, if we went over to the capital, they were always sick because they were just not used to traveling in cars. It's not something they'd grown up with.
And of course, then you had to go over the mountain. You didn't have the tunnel.
Yeah.
So it's quite an experience going over that mountain with people who were not good travelers, let's say.
Yeah, and there was lots of things, the language. I mean, the food, it was interesting that, the food was all fresh and seasonable. I mean, here in England, you can get strawberries all year round because they import them from abroad and one thing and another. But we got used to the fact that, figs were in season for just a short periods, and then like watermelons were in season, and different things were just in season for a period, and you had to make the most of them. Yeah, so the sights, the sounds, to see somebody sitting at a table on the pavement and selling cigarettes one by one, we were like one at a time. That's all people can afford, one cigarette. I mean, there were just lots of little things like that that was so different than what we were accustomed to. Sometimes, the state of the roads and different things. There was a lot of it. And the more we kind of traveled around, sometimes we would go into Kosovo or into Macedonia. Yeah, you learn to see the differences and the cultures and so forth. So it's very educational. And you have to accept that. You can't go to a foreign country. The problem with the British is we go to foreign countries and we expect them to be British. We still expect to have an English breakfast and tea and coffee, and we expect them to play cricket or whatever.
Not us personally.
No, not us personally. But so, we realized that, Albania was not going to change to please us. We would have to change, to fit in with Albania.
Yeah, and we were happy to do that.
That is wonderful that you were all welcoming and I guess accepting the differences in the culture, because there are a couple of differences, to be honest. And I'm very grateful that you were so keen at sort of being one with the people and the culture that they lived in. And that made your mission, I guess, very special. So obviously good things come to an end. So obviously your mission came to an end and you had to come back home. Was the transition very difficult for you? I guess because living in Albania is different to living in the UK. So how was that for you?
Yeah, well, we came home twice. So Sister Boydell became sick while we were in Albania. And we had to go and see a doctor in Tirana. And they discovered that she had a heart problem. And we didn't know about this. We knew she was struggling, getting upstairs and things like that. And so we were sent back to England so she could have a pacemaker fitted. So we were back in England for 6 weeks. And then, we came back to Albania to finish our mission.
That was for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, President Ford said we were the only people not only to volunteer once to go to Albania, but to volunteer twice to go to Albania. So, it's interesting. We met with the Fords just a few weeks ago, and Sister Ford was saying, what was it like when you came home? And we said, it was fine. That stage of our life had finished. It was so sad to say goodbye to all the people we'd met. But of course, we were coming back to family and friends and ward members we knew. And we just got on with the next stage of our life, whereas Sister Ford found it a real struggle to adapt from being the wife of the mission president and all that entailed to suddenly being home. And she said, I was glad to come home and see my family, but I would happily have gone back to Albania a month later. But, I think with all of our missions, that's just been a period of your life where you've been blessed to do something and to be of service and serve the Lord. And, you're grateful for that. And then you think, what's the next part of our lives? What does the Lord want us to do next?
Yeah, absolutely. We are very grateful for both of you being willing to serve and also leaving an impact on the people. Because although I don't know you personally, I know that there are many Albanian saints that always talk about you and the service that you granted. And you're not the only ones. And all the senior couple missionaries, I would say, they have an impact to the members and to the church particularly. So it's not just like a typical service where you just finish. I think people will always remember you, even if a decade goes on or many, many years, they always keep you very close to their hearts. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, while we were in America, I mean, like a number of the young people that Anita knows, served missions in England, then went to America and married Americans that got families. And so, we still have contact with some of those young people now when they're married with children and their lives are moving on. So, you're always a part of each other's lives. Mm-hmm. Always a part.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you a question because you probably are aware of this. Whenever somebody serves a mission, especially the young missionaries, when they come back home, they find it very difficult to transition and to sort of adjust to the new normal life. Based on your experience as seasoned missionaries, what would you say about what is the best thing we can do when returning from a full-time mission?
It's interesting. While we were in the States, we met with a young woman who just finished her mission, and she served here in Harrogate and in the Leeds mission. And, we said, how are you doing? She said, terrible. She said, I cry every day. I don't know what to do with myself. The structure's gone. I've no companion. I'm trying to find things to fill my life. So I think for us, because we're seniors and we're coming back, we have family that live just 5 minutes down the road from us. So we have our daughter and her 3 children and many, many friends. So for us, just coming home is comfortable. But for her, that 18 months of living with a companion and then suddenly being on your own, she was really struggling. And I think a lot do. And I think it's a bit like retirement. You have to plan ahead for what you're going to do. When you finish work, you can't just get up and say, oh, what will I do today? You have to have a plan to fill your life. Otherwise, your plan becomes pointless. Your life becomes pointless. So I think for young missionaries, and we know it's a problem, a lot of young missionaries struggle and don't stay in the church when they return. Again, I think they need a plan. And a lot of them, of course, plan to go on to university and hope to get married and so forth. But I know it's a big concern for the church. And we've had 5 missionaries out from our ward. We've still got 3 out who will be coming back this year. And so, I'm sure the bishop will be making plans to make sure that they're quickly integrated into the ward, that they've got plans for what they're going to do, whether they're going to go on to university or start work, and make sure they've got support. So I think the ward, family and friends all have role to play in accepting that person back and understanding what they're going through, and not just assuming they can switch off their mission and get on with the next part. There is a difficult transition period there.
Yeah, they've got to carry on serving, maybe in a different capacity, but 2 years service to the Lord comes to an end, but then you become a part-time server. So you have to fulfill your life in other ways, but continue serving the Lord as well.
Yeah, I used to talk about full-time missionaries and part-time missionaries. We're all part-time missionaries. So, just because you finish your full-time mission doesn't mean you're not a missionary anymore. It just means you're transitioning to a part-time missionary and still serving the Lord.
Yeah, I love that. Every member should be a missionary, part-time.
Yes. Or full-time if you can, but for a period. Yeah.
For sure. And now I would love to learn more about you and your professions that you went out throughout your lives. We know, Leonard, that you left school at 16 years old and started employment as apprentice. Tell us some more about it. It seems like very fancy to me.
It wasn't anything but fancy. So an apprenticeship, you go in at 16, and so you might go as an engineer, you might go as a car mechanic. There are jobs in which there are skills to learn, and so you're trained in those skills as you get older. So mine was in sheet metal work. So it was making things out of metal. A lot of them were machine guards to protect guards, to cover up dangerous parts of machinery so people wouldn't get trapped in it. Some of it was heating systems and all sorts of different things, but all primarily made out of metal. And so, there was lots of skills to learn. And I used to go to college 1 day a week, to learn some of those skills. So generally as an apprentice, you go from 16 to 21, and then at 21, you're supposed to be fully skilled then, and you're called a skilled man. So I did that up to 21, and then in our little branch, the bishop asked us if we would take a group of the youth on a youth hosteling holiday. Now, youth hostels in England, these are places out in the country generally where hikers and cyclists can go to get accommodation overnight. It was very cheap, very simple.
Dormitory type
accommodation, very simple meals, or people could make their own meals. So we took this youth on this 6-day trip around different hostels. It was very hard work, very challenging.
Dragging them along.
Yeah, it was hard for us. But anyway, at the end of that week, all the youth went home, and Joan and I stayed on for another week, and we went to stay at a hostel that was run by a lady. And so we got to know her, and we got to know about the job, and we would go on the beach in the day, and she would come with us, and we said, oh, this sounds like a good job. You work up an evening, you work in the morning, then you spend the day on the beach. So we applied to be youth hostel wardens. And so just 6 months after we got married, we had the opportunity to go and do that. So Joan was a personal assistant to a managing director, and I was still doing my sheet metal work. So we gave up all that training for nothing, and went as youth hostel wardens. And that was a wonderful time in our life. We might have 40 or 60 or 80 people staying for an evening. A lot of them would want meals and accommodation, and I would help to maintain the building. So they were generally very old buildings that nobody else wanted. And yeah, so we had ghost stories and different things with ghosts. And, and so that was wonderful. We did that for about 8 years. So we've then we packed in the hosteling, and then we were in Bolton for a while, and then we moved down to London to the BYU Study Abroad Centre. So that was Brigham Young University Centre in London, just a small centre for people to come to for 6 months with their faculty members, and they would learn while they were there, and they would travel, and we were the managers of that. Which again was a unique opportunity because we kind of created our own little LDS community within those buildings, which, for us growing up in the church, we were always isolated. We were the only ones in school, and I was the only member in my work. Suddenly to have this little community of about 60 Latter-day Saints all living together for 6 months was quite wonderful. And that's when we were in Hyde Park Ward, where I later became bishop, etc. So we've swapped around. We did that for 6, 7 years, and then we moved back up to Bolton, to Harrogate, and done different jobs, worked for myself and ran a company.
Mostly in property maintenance.
Mostly in property maintenance, yeah. We ended up in a stately home, taking care of a stately home, different things. So we've moved around. We've moved about, we can't remember. We think we've moved 21 times since we got married.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yes, our children would agree with that.
Yeah.
What about you, Joanne? How was it juggling with your profession and also being a mother? How was it? Did you want to be like to work outside your house? How was that? I'm curious to know that.
I started working. I left school at 15 and got a job working in an office as an office junior. And then I did the same kind of thing that Leonard did. 1 day a week, the company that I worked for allowed me to go to college to learn shorthand and typing and commerce. And so, yeah, I ended up as a personal assistant and managing director of a company, which is when we went and changed direction completely and went to youth hostels. But for us both, I think, not just me, having that situation where we lived where we worked, both of us, was wonderful, because when children started to come along, Leonard was there just as much as I was. So the children grew up having Daddy not go out to work because he worked where we lived. And so it was hard in many respects. I can remember with our third child, I was expecting to go into hospital. They told me that if I didn't start on the day I was due, I had to go in and be induced. And so we got up that morning, I cooked 80 breakfasts, and I had my case packed, and then Leonard took me into hospital to have the baby. And then I think about a week later, they allowed me to come home because I had a few complications. They allowed me to come home, and I went straight back to work. So the baby was with me while I was doing all the cooking and everything else that was required at the hostel. But it was a wonderful experience, and our children talk about this, saying how blessed they were to the fact of having both mum and dad around all the time. And, they used to follow us around when we were doing the cleaning and help by sprinkling powder around when they shouldn't be behind us. So we had to go and clean all over again. But it was fun.
Yeah, and it meant very often that, Joan was tired in an afternoon and needed a rest, and I was there, to take over while she did that rest. So, yeah, we just sort of complemented each other with the responsibilities and what had to be done, and just shared parenting a lot more than most fathers get the opportunity to. So it was a real blessing to be so close to the children, for so much of our lives.
And it's quite interesting because when we were on our mission in Albania, we met some of the other couples who were serving, and the wives were finding it extremely difficult living with their husband 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because they'd never been used to that. Some of them had been in the military and had been away working. And so for them to be together constantly was hard. Whereas for us, we'd worked like that for most of our lives. So the mission was just an extension of that.
That's a huge blessing. I'm so happy that you guys had this opportunity.
Yeah. Well, it was. It just worked out that way. And even different stages. Sometimes, I would be going out to work, but the children were older then. But certainly during those young, impressionable years, it was certainly good to be there. And where we lived in London, we would right next to Kensington Gardens. You know, you could just walk the children up, and you got this huge park to play in and different things to do. So yeah, sometimes we don't think about it, but we really have been blessed in those respects.
Absolutely. Well, now it's time for another exciting topic to talk about. I'm referring to how you guys met, because we're very curious to know how that day was, and if there was anything maybe special that you found on each other when you first met. So who would like to start? Oh, and by the way, nice haircut.
That's his Mexican stage.
I know, look at those clothes. I thought I was the coolest dude on earth, but you can tell that was when we lived in the Isle of Man.
We had 2 children at that stage, yes.
Yeah, but anyway, well, as Joan said, yeah, we just met at church. She was baptized in the November 62. I was being a little wayward at the time, and not attending church very well. But anyway, I went back in 83, and Joan was there, and we met.
63.
63, sorry. 83, you'd be getting old, wouldn't you? 63. Yeah, so we just met at church. She was like the new girl in the branch. We were fortunate. We had a really good youth group. We did lots and lots of things together, lots of group activities that we were good at. We dated for a few months early on, and then stopped, and we were just good friends for many years. And then I guess at some point, thinking about marriage and who you want to spend your life with, I kind of realized Joan was the person. I had to persuade her to go out with me again. I had to persuade her father even more to let me go out with her again, because he wasn't very keen on me at the time. So we were good friends for many years, just in the youth. We used to call it MIA in those Mutual Improvement Association. It was called the youth program. So we were good. We just had a lot of friends and did a lot of things together. And but then like later on, it just became serious.
When he finally convinced me to go back out with him, I said, why do you want me to go out with me? You've already been out with me. He managed to convince me that he was serious, and he'd done a lot of praying and thinking. So we took the step. I think the thing is, we'd known each other for so long, we didn't have to get to know each other. So right from the start, it was serious. And so I think we were going out together for about 11 months, and then got engaged. And then 6 months later, we got married.
Wow. Look at us. We haven't changed a bit.
Oh, no.
Oh, don't we look young? My word.
People talk about beards, and they say, do you like beards? And I said, well, I married a man with a beard, so I can't say no.
Yeah, I would have one now, but it wouldn't be the same color.
No, you look like Father Christmas now.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful to hear your love story. It's very inspiring to us as well, that how you stuck up together, and you took that step, because many of us, I guess, we struggle for that big step, because we feel like we might make a mistake, but you had trust in each other and you just went for it. So I congratulate you for doing that. Obviously, you mentioned because of your love for each other and your marriage, beautiful children came to your life. Could you tell us briefly regarding your children? What do they mean for you, and what's your relationship with them?
Well, we have 4 children, a daughter, 2 sons, and then a daughter. So we've just been in America, stayed with our eldest son. That's Craig in the background with a dark T-shirt on. Mm-hmm. Next to him is Brett with a white T-shirt on. Then next to Joan is Emma, our youngest. Next to me is Cheryl, our eldest. So they were all raised in the gospel. Craig and Brett both served missions. Then they went on to get married and sealed in the temple. Emma, unfortunately, moved away from the church in her teenage years. So we always say, and then later in life, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, Craig and his family left the church. So we say we have 210 percenters, that's Cheryl and Brett, and then 2 who are not really associated with the church. Those are difficult challenges to face again, but it all comes down to respect and agency, and respecting other people's agency. So we just spent 3 weeks with Craig and his family, and they live their lives as they want to, and they respect that we want to live our lives as we want to. So there's no animosity, there's no less love for them. We're grateful for the good people they are, that within or without the church. They're just good people who are willing to serve other people. Then we went to stay with Cheryl, and so she's 110%. She's the Relief Society president in a very large ward of about, I think their average attendance is about 300 a week. And so she's just always been dynamic in the church. And her husband, Stuart, is the same. So he was the one who was the mission president for 3 years in England. And it was wonderful to watch those two and to work with them and to see how they operated together and how in sync they were, and their love for the Lord and the gospel, just how much they did for the missionaries. Our son, Brett, he's always been solid in the church. He served a mission up in Scotland. And then he went on to be a bishop, and he was the stake president for 10 years. He's married with 4 children. So we had 4 children, and all our children had 4 children. It's the only number we know. So, I used to know what 4 was in Albanian, but I can't remember.
Qatar.
But then our youngest daughter, Emma, lives just 5 minutes down the road. She has 3 children. She had 4 children, but 1 child died just before it was due to be born, which was just a really, really challenging period for us, to help her through that really difficult period. And so what she did as a consequence of her experience, she set up a charity with some of the people from the hospital to give greater support to parents who were going through a similar experience of losing a baby either just before birth or just after birth. And she's been running that charity now for 17 years. So her boy would have been 17 now. So she doesn't live a bad life, but she has done so much good for so many hundreds of parents suffering that horrendous loss. So she's been a real blessing in the lives of people. So that's what I say, within or without the gospel, at the end of the day, they're very good people. And I think that's what the Lord will appreciate about them. They're not selfish or insular. They're just willing to be out there doing things for other people.
And I think as a parent, it's very difficult when your children decide to take a different path than the gospel and the one that they've been brought up in. But you just have to accept that, they have their agency. And I've always said that we just open up our arms and we love them even more. We show them that, we still love them, and the relationship we have is solid and good.
Yeah, and so we have 16 grandchildren, and we have 8 great-grandchildren who unfortunately all live in America. So we've been catching up with them for the last six weeks. Our family grows. When you show that picture of the 2 of us getting married, we had no idea what that was the start of.
It's the ripples in the water, isn't it?
Yeah.
You throw the stone in and the ripples go out. You join the church as a convert, not knowing what the future will hold, and here we are.
Yeah.
57 years married.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I've been in the church 65 years in September, and we're still trying to make ripples.
That is amazing. That's amazing. And I really like what you said, because it does start with you. Your relationship with one another is so essential, because then obviously your children come along and their families and so on. And I guess my next question is regarding this, because you guys have been together for so long, and me and Anita probably kind of like envious of that, to be honest, because we want that for ourselves. So I just wanted to say, what would you say is the secret of a healthy and happy relationship with your spouse?
Oh, I'm not sure we can share that.
Please.
You have to find that out for yourself. People ask this question. A marriage is just a day-by-day thing, isn't it? You start off and you think, oh, we've been married a week. We're still together. Then you've been married a year, and then you've been married 5 years, and the children have come along, and job opportunities and service in the church. I just think, I don't think we seriously think about what we're doing. We just do what comes naturally for us. And it's not all, smooth sailing. Things occur. Our personal characters sometimes get in the way of relationships. We're learning. I think I'm just so grateful for the church, because I think it's the only organization that has tried to teach me, that I can change. It would be one of my worries is that I'm too much like my dad, and I don't like some of the characteristics my dad had. And John had to teach me that some of those characteristics weren't acceptable in marriage. And I've learned that. But again, the church so often is trying to teach the brethren how to be better husbands, how to be better fathers, how to be more loving and more involved and more hands-on. So again, that's all part of what the church can do for you in your life, is teach these higher principles. And so we just work at it. And then suddenly it's 57 years and a bit more now. Yeah. But we laugh a lot. I think I'm the biggest joker on earth. I think I'm really funny. My wife doesn't always agree with that. But, we just have a laugh, and life's easy. And, we do things together and we do things separate. And, we're not envious of each other, what we might be doing or what skills we have. We just realize that we're two components that fortunately fit together quite well. And I think, when you don't have that, you have to find a way to make that happen. Sometimes you have to grease the bearings so that they run more smoothly, or you have to bite your tongue, or you have to do away with your pride, and so forth. I was just reading an article, about the basis of a marriage, and it's recognizing that you're two individuals, trying to come together in one unit. And at times you remain individuals, and at times you coalesce and you're close together and you're functioning as one. But you have to constantly respect that you're different. Sometimes I will make decisions, sometimes Joan will make decisions. And I think of all the talks I've listened to in conference to men about not being heavy-handed or domineering, and so I've tried to listen to those. And I think somehow on a day-to-day basis, it works.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when I think back to when we first got married. Leonard was 21, I was 19. And we were totally different people then than we are now. But I think the fact that we've gone in the same direction, if you like. And obviously the church has a big part to play in that. If you're both working together for the same goal, I think that's what keeps you strong. Because we are different people than we were when we first got married. But fortunately, we still gel.
I think you guys are a wonderful couple and a great example to me, and for sure many others, and also to your children. So keep laughing together.
We will.
Yeah, no choice about that.
Well, now I would love to talk about your hobbies. I know that you have many. I talked a bit at the beginning. So can you talk about a bit about your hobbies, what you enjoy to do in your free time? And would you say that developing hobbies is a way of a happy life? How was that for you?
Well, as I said earlier, when you retire from work, you have to have something to fill your life. Otherwise, it's just a void, and you can get lonely and depressed, or you go back to work. So a lot of people go and play golf. I never played golf. So all through my life, I think one of the things I liked about being an apprentice, even though I was working with metal, is that it was creative in a sense. I was starting with a drawing and I was cutting up metal and I was welding it together and creating components and so forth. And so, my favorite lesson at school was woodwork because, again, it was being creative and working with my hands. When I was a teenager, I would go into my dad's shed and find a piece of wood and try and make it into some shape or other. So for me, working with my hands and creating something is far more fulfilling than, brain work. So I've always kind of had creative hobbies. When we were in London at the BYU Centre, I did a silversmithing course. I've done stained glass courses and working with plaster, and I'm always trying to learn some new skill. I think when you try something yourself, you then appreciate the skill of the people who do it well. So, if you try to do a painting and it doesn't go well, you understand how good some painters are. Or if you're chiseling a piece of wood to make a model, you understand the difficulties, and then, you understand the people who are masters at it. So trying things, I think, gives you an appreciation for the skills other people have. And then I play sports. I like to go out walking. I like to cycle. I like to play table tennis. And then I go out every Friday and do woodworking. So all those things. Unfortunately, while on holiday, I had a fall and injured my right shoulder, so I'm not sure I can play table tennis at the moment. So I'm a bit mad about that. But I can walk and I think I can cycle, so I'll still keep fit. But it's all part of that roundedness, isn't it? I was just reading a quote just the other day about marriage being like the wheel on a bike. In the wheel on a bicycle, all the spokes have to be exactly the same length. Otherwise, the wheel isn't round. It'll become slightly elliptical and it won't run properly. And so sometimes in marriage, I think sometimes we can concentrate too much time on one particular spoke, and it kind of throws things out of sync. So we should try and keep, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, psychological parts of our marriage kind of an equal length, giving them attention when they need it, but just trying to keep the wheel round. A bit like a wedding ring is round. Somebody said, the thing about a wedding ring, it has no beginning and no end, it's eternal. And so I think, if you can look on your marriage as eternal and you're just working along through different stages and learning as you go along, and we're very often just being guided by external forces and the spirit. Yeah, you can make it work.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably realised by the way he talks that he can't sit still. He does not sit down and relax. He has to be doing something all the time. I'm the opposite. I quite like quiet time. Maybe that stems from being an only child, because I never had siblings around, and my father was very often quite poorly. So I like quiet time. I'm quite happy to sit down and read a book. That's probably one of my hobbies. I love doing family history. I used to love horse riding. I did have a horse of my own at one stage, but that's many years ago. Physical problems now don't allow me to go riding. In fact, while we were away, our granddaughter and her daughters went horse riding, and I just wanted to go so badly, but I knew that I couldn't because my knees wouldn't have stood up to that at all. So yeah, I think you get to stages in your life where you realize that perhaps you can't do what you used to do, so you have to find something else. And I can sit quite happily with my laptop and do family history research, and Leonard will walk in and say, "Are you still on that? That's been 2 hours. That's 3 hours." I said, "Yeah."
Not bored yet.
But we're very different. He's much more physical activities than I am.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the balance.
Mm-hmm.
Is not expecting that you'll both go off and have the same interest. I used to love windsurfing. That's not something Joan would ever have contemplated, but she was happy to sit on the bank.
I always used to go with him and sit there and watch.
Yeah, she would watch me windsurfing and be happy for me to do that. And so now I have to be happy if she wants to do family history or if she wants to read. And I'll just go off and do a bike ride or walk. So again, there are differences where we haven't become one person in 57 years. We're still two individuals, with individual likes and dislikes, and we just have to respect that. And if she wants a new hobby, I'll try and support that. Or yeah.
Ooh, I'll have to think one up, I think.
Yeah. So it's for me, I have to fill my life. I really have to fill my life with activity. It would be better. I keep reading about mindfulness, but I haven't got time to sit down and do it.
Well, I love that. I love how you guys live your life, and you truly complement each other. And this is a great lesson because I think one mistake that couples make is that they try to change each other, or like they get mad when they don't have the same hobbies or don't do the same activities. I mean, that's important, of course. Like you need to have things in common and to spend time together, but also like leave this free agency, like so they can have their own hobbies and develop as individuals. That's pretty important. And I love that you have so many hobbies and you live them. You're not just like dream about them, but you go there. And like I was impressed about the horse riding, Sister Boydell.
Well, it's about 30 years since I've done any.
You see, marriage is also about sacrifice. So when we lived in London, I used to travel around on a motorbike because the London traffic was so bad that traveling in a car just took forever. And since I was the stake president, I had to travel around the state. So I had this big motorbike, and people were always amazed. I would turn up at the ward for the meetings on my motorbike with my helmet and suit, and then I'd take it off, and I'd have my best suit, my white shirt and tie on underneath.
It's like James Bond,
Well, not very usual for a stake president to ride a bike.
Probably, but it got me around the state very easily. And the little kids were really impressed with it. They thought I was cool. But then when we moved up to Harrogate in 1989, driving a car became a pleasure again because the traffic was much less. And so I sold the bike. This is my sacrifice. I sold the bike and gave the money to my wife so she could buy a horse. Now, the greater love has no man than to sacrifice his motorbike.
You'll be rewarded for that, for sure.
I hope so.
Yeah. That's exciting. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I feel really sad now that we're nearing the end of our conversation. However, I want to give you one last chance to share a brief message of encouragement, especially dedicated to the saints of Albania, about the importance of enduring to the end in the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Well, we would certainly like to do that. And as I said earlier, we were so impressed by the youth of Albania in the church. I think I've rarely met more dedicated young people, to the seminary programs and institute programs and serving missions when financially it was very difficult, etc. And there is this thing, of course, you don't know how long it's going to be for. None of us have a date in the calendar when our lives on earth will come to end. It would be kind of useful if we could have that. But anyway, that's not part of the plan. And so you have to stick with it. You have to stay motivated. You have to recognize the truths. I think you have to look for the blessings so you know how much the gospel is blessing your life. Even in difficult times, the gospel is there for you in ways that most people don't have. And all through my life, I've wondered how people who don't have the gospel get through life. Without the hope, without the knowledge, without the belief, without the faith. How do you get through the tragedies in life without knowing the things we know in the church? My daughter losing a baby. That was tough, but we kind of understood the concept of that, and we had to try and help her to understand the concept of that. So, yeah, life isn't always easy in the church. You can have tremendous challenges, but without the church, those challenges will just be so much greater because you've nowhere to turn. Whether it's your bishop, your branch president, your Relief Society president, whether it's the Holy Spirit, whether it's Heavenly Father or Jesus Christ, you just have somewhere else to turn when you need that support. And so sticking with it, is the most important thing, even through the great, great difficulties and trials that might come.
Yeah, I quite agree. It's 60 odd years since we joined the church, and it's not always been an easy path. But because we've had each other, we've held each other's hand, and when one slows down a little bit, the other one is there to pull the other one along. And I think that having a testimony is an ongoing thing. We can't think, when we join the church, we have a testimony. Oh, that's it, because it's going to be tested, and we'll have trials. But just being steadfast and enduring what we have to go through, and often we have to do it with a smile on our face. We accept that the life is not going to be 100% perfect all the time, but that it's like the refiner's fire. If we have difficulties, we can come out at the other side stronger, but we have to stick with it, and not give in.
I love that.
Opposition in life, and that's Satan's goal, isn't it? Just to make us give in, pack it in, put it aside, become like the world, let him be our God instead of our Heavenly Father.
For sure. And I love that what you said, that you kept, you were close to each other, even when someone was slower. And I think that's important also as a couple, but also for people around you. And I think you really lived that throughout your life.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to ask you the last question. So it's for both of you. What does it mean to you to be a Latter-day Saint?
Everything. Just one word, everything.
I was hoping we were going to talk about Albanian drivers. Because we certainly have a testimony of them from 18 months in Albania. But we survived. Yeah, what does it mean to be a Latter-day Saint? Yeah, it just means being dedicated to what you believe in. And just sticking to it, as we say. Stick to the course, see it through, and take as many people with you as you can. It's not a lonely journey. We're making it together. At some point, one of us will have to make it on our own for a while. And there's all those people out there who we can try and take with us and make their journey better. And that's what Heavenly Father expects. And that's not easy doing that. Sometimes that takes more courage than we think we have. But just being able to, we're here to serve the Lord and to be instruments in His hands, and He'll let us know what we need to do. And I think we've always listened to that and just accepted whatever responsibilities have come along and done our best until such time as we've been released, and then something else has come along. So some Americans have a word, stick-to-itiveness. Don't let go. It's a horrible word. Stick to it.
Yeah, to me, it's like I said earlier, every blessing in my life that I hold dear has come to me because I joined the church and became a Latter-day Saint. So that word, everything, sums it up for me.
I can testify of that. I mean, it's everything for us, that we can understand the importance of the gospel. It's amazing. Well, thank you guys for being here. It's been a pleasure. For me, it's been a privilege to know you for more than 10 years and enjoy your friendship. And I'm so grateful that people can know you, those that they don't, and learn how good you are, how funny you are, how dedicated to be a good Latter-day Saint you are, and how beautiful a relationship you have with each other. You are truly an example for me, and I'm happy that we had the pleasure to hear wise words.
Some of them. From my wife.
It's wonderful. I can just join Anita's comments and just say it is a true pleasure to get to know you. And I have no doubt that you've been such an important contributor to the building of the kingdom in Albania. And it's interesting that you chose to serve there, whereas others, they receive a calling without having an option. But I love that you had the courage, I would say, and also the pleasure of choosing to serve in our country, which means a lot to us, and we're grateful for the contribution that you made in serving there. So thank you both.
No,
Thank you.
that was our pleasure. Our pleasure. We
Wonderful.
appreciate all the Albanian people did for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were wonderful.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We'd like to thank both Leonard and Joan Boydell, and thank you all for watching this episode number 65 of Qëndro dhe Shqipëri's podcast. We'd like to thank also our team for supporting us with this episode. Please remember that this episode will be both in English and also translated in Albanian, which you can find it in all of our podcast channels. Please remember to subscribe in our YouTube channel as well. If you'd like to take part in these conversations, send us a message on our social media or on our email address, sheshpodcast24@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye-bye. Mirupafshim.
Bye, mirupafshim.
Thank you. All the very best to you.
Thank you.